are now listening to the War Report Podcast Network.
What's going on, SEC sports fans? This is your guy, Ike Jones. I am here with my guy, Dustin, and we are talking a little bit about the upcoming change to the SEC, one that I did not see coming. I'll be honest with you, Dustin. I was one of the people who was like, I don't know if this is ever going to be a thing. The SEC is too greedy. There's no incentive for them to do this. But it seems as if it has become a thing. 2026 SEC going to a 9-game conference schedule. What are your first thoughts when it comes to that?
Well, I agree with you. We were at SEC Media Days together, and the tone when this topic was brought up was it felt like from people in the know was, why? Why would the SEC do that? There's not really a need to do it. And then over the last couple of days, kind of reading into it and everything, it seems like it has some kind of tie to the college football playoff.
Yeah. Being
pressured by the Big Ten and the ACC so everybody can come to the table with the same agreement. I got a lot of thoughts on it, Ike. I'll say this. I reserve judgment. We haven't seen it. We haven't seen it in action yet. As you probably know by now, I'm not a big fan of change when it comes to college football. But we'll see how it goes. I mean, we might get a year or two into it, and I might say, hey, it's cool to see all these teams. I mean, I don't like it when Auburn doesn't play LSU for a couple of years. This kind of thing might fix some of that stuff. So it's very interesting. I think the timing of it is interesting to me because I'm not saying this is what happened, but it almost kind of feels like you got bullied a little bit by the Big Ten. Like they got to the podium at their media days and talked some trash, and then you said, yeah, whatever, we're ignoring you, and then you ultimately feels like you kind of caved and folded and did what they wanted you to do. I'll say this when we get started: 9 games in the SEC does not equal 9 games in the Big Ten or the ACC.
It doesn't. It does not. I mean, so here's the thing. And while I agree with you, I do think, I know for a fact this has something to do with the college football playoff. I'm not sure I would go to it being bullied. I think that that what they needed in order to make this happen was assurances from someone. Now, who those assurances came from, but assurances from someone. It's like, all right, great. We'll play the 9 games. It just needs to mean something that we did that. Like, you need to make sure that the criteria for our teams getting evaluated is built off of the strength of what we feel like is going to be the toughest schedules out there in college football. If we're going to play 9 games, that means it needs to mean a little bit. It needs to be weighted a little differently than what it is right now as far as strength of schedule is concerned, which ultimately I think is going to make other people more upset about at the SEC. They're going to be like, oh, the SEC is getting too much. It's like, you begged for this, and the only consideration that they needed, you gave to them. So I kind of feel like everybody else caved here. They was like, all right, great, we'll do it. There's only one stipulation, and they got the one stipulation they needed. And so it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. Now, it's not going to have any impact on the 2026 college football playoff. It's 2025 season, but 2026 is when that champion is going to be crowned. But that following season, I'm going to be very interested to see how many SEC teams get in, because right now, 4 is what the precedent was in year 1 of the 12-team playoff. Also, I do feel like this is going to open the door for the playoff expansion. I think we're going to be moving beyond 12 teams here pretty quickly now that the SEC has made this move.
Yeah, that's the big part of it. I think they want to get to 16, and this kind of helps you do that. And I don't think that Greg Sankey was sitting there saying like, they called us out, we got to do something. But it's just like I said, the timing of it. But look, for me to kind of get into what you were talking about there of SEC schedules being weighted, that's where, as an SEC fan, I'm looking at it and I'm reserving judgment. I want to see how this is implemented, because if you look at college baseball, if you look at college basketball, you have quad systems. You're not punished for losses on the road in a good team. I can't tell you how many times I have to get on the podcast and, Auburn will lose a baseball series. They might lose 2 baseball series in a row. And you have to tell everybody, hey, calm down. Okay. And this is not going to really hurt you as far as seeding in the tournament, because you just lost to the number 3 team and the number 5 team on the road in the SEC. The system still knows you're a good team. And as long as you win some, you can't have a terrible season, obviously. But if you handle your business, you're a quality team, it'll all work itself out. Same thing in the basketball. You've seen where a team will go on the road on a Tuesday night and lose at Mississippi State, and maybe that team, maybe the team that lost to Mississippi State is a Tennessee team that was ranked number 5 in the country, and Mississippi State's not ranked, but they're still a quad. They're still a quad 1 quality opponent, and you went on the road and you lost a close game at the Hump. And ultimately, the college basketball committee has a system in place that doesn't punish you that much for a quality road loss. So that's kind of where I am as an SEC fan, because I look at Ohio State's non-conference schedule last year. I look at Indiana's non-conference schedule last year, and I say, well, you didn't play anybody.
Right. It's not like they're out here playing world beaters in their non-con trying to call out the SEC's weak schedule.
Yeah, Stignetti up there in Indiana, man. Like, what are you talking about, buddy? That you just and the thing is, it's disingenuous. He knows better. He knows better when he's saying that kind of stuff. If he ever gets a job in the SEC, I guarantee you he's singing a different tune. You know what it is with all of that. But the SEC took it a step up, and they implemented a rule saying you also have to schedule. In one of these 3 non-conference games, you have to schedule an opponent from a Power 4 conference.
Right.
So you really only have you could really only schedule 2 gimme games. So the SEC kind of took it a step further. And I'm sure, teams like LSU are looking around and saying, buddy, we were already going to Clemson. Like, how much more did you want us to do? I mean, you look at Auburn going on the road to Baylor. Teams, I know Florida State was down last year, but Florida State, in my lifetime, has majority been a solid team. Florida playing them at the end of every season. South Carolina's been playing that Clemson team at the end of every single season. Like
Georgia Tech, Georgia, right? Like we can rattle them off here.
We can do this all day. Auburn's opened the season with Oregon before, with Washington before. Like this is not
They've had games against Penn State recently. They played Cal in the home and home series.
Went to a whiteout. Auburn in a year where they played LSU, Alabama, and Georgia, made the decision to go to Happy Valley and play Penn State in a whiteout. Didn't have to do that.
Right.
So don't act like these are the same things they're not. Don't act like the SEC has been running. The SEC has not been running. So you know what? Y'all got your stupid 9-game schedule, and to one-up you, we're going to play an even different, a more difficult schedule. And let's see what the discussion is then. Because I look at Indiana's non-conference schedule for the next 4 or 5 years. Look, what are you talking about? 11-1 regular season for Indiana was not the same as 9-3 South Carolina or 9-3 Alabama last year. It's just not. And I'm tired of acting like these teams are playing the same sport.
Yeah, it's a ridiculous notion that the SEC somehow is playing more weak opponents than everybody else and padding their own statistics throughout the season. But again, you brought up the perfect examples. The way that they whine about the SEC in basketball and baseball is what's going to start happening. I mean, it's already happening in football, but now the SEC has removed the last hurdle of an excuse from them to not be able to say, okay, now we need these considerations. So they're going to do all that. The question I have for you before we get into the proposed or what we've seen floated around as the permanents is, what does this do for teams in the Group of Five now and in the FCS? Because there's going to be less opportunities every single season for one of those teams to be able to get right. Like right now on Auburn's schedule, you've got 2 Group of Five opponents and an FCS opponent. One of those is not going to happen, right? What they call the bye games. And some of these programs actually rely on that money to help fund what they do in their athletic departments. What do you think this does for those teams?
Man, it's really, really interesting. And I think that you kind of find out in discussing these things with people or seeing the moves from the higher ups. How much do you care about your own school? How much do you care about your own conference? How much do you care about making money? And how much do you care about the overall health of the sport?
Right.
I'm not sure for the reason that you mentioned. I don't know if it's good for the overall health of the sport. I've been DMing back and forth with a guy from a Group of Five school. I'm not going to say his name yet. He's a beat writer for another school. I want to try to get him on our show because he tweeted out, "Hey, this might not be the best for our program." Because they need that money. And I know I listened to your podcast the other day over on the Auburn Express where you spoke to a Group of Five guy that played at Middle Tennessee, and he talked about just how the experience of them going and playing those big games, and they were able to win some of those games. So I don't think it's good for those programs, man. I mean, they're losing opportunities to make big money. Now, maybe is there a thing where it helps them out in the portal a little bit because that's less time that SEC coach is getting eyes on that Sunbelt guys players. But ultimately, I kind of subscribe to the theory of they got the tape. They got GMs. They got scouts now. If they want you, they'll find you type thing. It's gonna be interesting to see how it all plays out. But I am a college football fan that I love all of it. I mean, if Middle Tennessee State and Sam Houston State are locked up in a tight game in the fourth, we might throw that on the dual screen. I got love for it. So I do worry about that aspect of it. And I hope, in some cases, like if you take a team like, let's say a Mercer or a Tennessee Chattanooga, who have traditionally scheduled SEC teams, man, that might help fund their volleyball, their tennis. I mean, they're getting like $2 million sometimes for these games. That could keep multiple athletics afloat at those schools. And I want all these universities to thrive. I want student athletes of all levels to have opportunities to go to college, get a degree, and be successful. And me personally, I can never have enough football, so I don't want to see those programs suffer and go away. I hope they can find a way and maybe raise the price tag. Maybe say, hey, man, if you want me to come to Bryant-Denny or Neyland Stadium and get drilled by 40, it's going to cost a little bit more money this time.
I mean, listen, hey, you've got more money to spend. It's one less game that you have to pay out to somebody else. Then let's just up the ante on these other ones. But it's just less opportunities. And I do wonder what it does for the scheduling at those other schools, right? Trying to now, you have less opportunities, at least from the 16 SEC teams. You could go and find an additional game to get to your 12 for that schedule. Now you've got to figure out, because some of these games, I don't know how far out they schedule these FCS and Group of Five opponents, but some of these games may need to get unscheduled now from the 2026 season. I don't know how far in advance they're doing those negotiations, but now you got to go find a different person that you want to play. And maybe, hey, listen, all these other people that have been whining, go get one of those conferences to pay you some money to go up there and play them. Go talk to the Big Ten or the Big 12 or the ACC. You've been whining all this time. Go find your pay game over there, because we don't have them anymore over here in the SEC for you. At least we don't have as many as we had. So we will see how that impacts.
Like another point of this too is, and I think Josh Pate was the first person I heard say this, and he was saying this before this news came out, but I think it becomes even more relevant now in the SEC. 7-5 might be the new 9-3.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely changes. It definitely, especially if you're going into a 16-team playoff, like if you thought the leash for your coach was short prior to now, it just got a lot shorter, because your pathways to success are a lot more available now. And so mediocrity just isn't going to be, it's not going to be tolerated, man. If you're a team missing bowl eligibility every year, your coach is seeing the door after 2 seasons now in the SEC. Like, those contracts for these coaches are going to start. That's another thing I don't think people are thinking about, is like the contracts for coaches are going to start. If you're a guy like, I don't want to pick on them, but if you're the coach of, let's not say names, you'll just say the position, who's currently sitting in these seats. So what I'm talking about. But if you're the coach at Kentucky right now, and you've been kind of floundering as a program, right, teetering on the door, now, if you could just get to 8 wins, you might get to the postseason. But if you can't accomplish that, then, these 10 years of coaches where they're barely making 7-8 wins, I don't think you're going to see that in the SEC anymore, right? Like, if you look at, both of us support Auburn. Coach Hugh Freeze had those first 2 years in this new reality, we wouldn't be having a conversation about whether this was a hot seat season. It 100% is one. There's no way you can go into this season and not make the college football playoff with 8-9 wins in your third year, when you're getting all the support that you do at a place like Auburn, and find that to be acceptable, right? Like, the level of acceptability at some of these programs drastically changes in this new world of the SEC, even though it's tougher to get to 9 wins now.
Right. And that's a great point. And even if let's say you mess around and do lose one of those games, like the way Hugh lost to New Mexico State, boy, it makes it even more just.
Yeah.
Like, this had to be a win. This had to be a win. Is going to be the feeling, Like, it already was, but even more so now.
Yeah, it's gonna become, again, the level of acceptability changes drastically with this new reality. All right, let's pivot here and talk a little bit about some of what most everyone who's put out some sort of projections has the same list of 3 for each of these schools, but let's talk about the list of 3 for each of them. What makes a lot of sense So we'll start in alphabetical order. No, that's the only way it makes sense. So somebody doesn't feel like you're not talking about their team. Actually, let's go in reverse alphabetical order just so people don't feel any kind of way. We'll talk Vandy first. Vanderbilt's list of 3 here is Tennessee, Kentucky, and Auburn, right? So you've got Tennessee, who's the in-state rival, makes a lot of sense. Kentucky kind of being that other team that's kind of like, when you think Kentucky rivals, I think Florida and I think LSU, right? I don't know how many like traditional rivalries Kentucky has. Kentucky actually.
You mean Louisville, right? You said LSU.
Well, no, I mean like the Kentucky LSU game for me. Just I have so many memories of that the wild endings in those games.
Yeah, I got you.
And so like I think about that, but yes, Louisville is the in-state rival for them. I'm just talking about SEC rivals for like the traditional 3. So I think So Vandy getting Auburn. I think that's the only way to make it where I guess it's close for them. I don't know what you do with Vandy, because Vandy is one of those teams that doesn't have, like, other than Tennessee. Yeah. Who is the rival for Vandy that you put on their schedule from within the SEC? There really isn't a school.
Yeah, I mean, for some schools, it's going to become a number game. Like, how many of these Kentucky's big rivalries an ACC team? Right. So how do you kind of mix and match this? You know why they're going to give Auburn Vanderbilt? Because they know that Auburn has to play Georgia and Alabama every year.
Right, 100%.
Then you have a team like LSU, who, well, man, they got rivalries with half the damn conference. Right. You know, I got a good buddy that graduated from LSU. I was talking to him about this last night, and I was like, what games do you not want to lose? And he was like, well, we can't lose the Arkansas game because it's the battle of the boot. We can't lose the Ole Miss game. We can't lose the Florida game. Hell, we can't really lose the Alabama game at this point. And it just went down the list. And it's like, yeah, I hear you. So for every team, it's a little bit different.
This is an impossible task to limit this to 3 and make sure you preserve rivalries. Like, some of them make a lot of sense. You already mentioned Auburn, Alabama, then Auburn, Georgia, right? Like, you almost can't see those rivalries go away. Yeah. But who is going to be the third team? And the unfortunate reality is the third team for Auburn is going to be a tough team more than likely, or you give them the team that traditionally kind of has been the bottom feeder, which, you know, listen, Vandy's no gimme anymore, but, you know, we'll see what happens post Diego Pavia. Texas A&M is next on the list here, and they've got Texas, of course, LSU, and Mississippi State. Like, I feel like that's just kind of like, okay, Texas A&M versus LSU. Like, do I feel like that's just a super huge rivalry? Like, I don't know.
The SEC's been trying to force that since A&M came in.
Right.
Putting it at the end of the season, you know, every year. And I know they changed it with Texas now, but it feels like one of those where they've kind of, and I know they've played a lot historically. But yeah, it's me personally, like, LSU Arkansas is bigger to me than LSU A&M.
Like, in terms of what it is for Texas A&M, again, I think they're just trying to find something that makes sense for them. But we'll see how that goes. I mean, once you start playing a team every year, it's going to become a natural rivalry, but I don't know that how natural that is for them. With Texas, you've got Oklahoma, perfect sense. Texas A&M, perfect sense. And then Arkansas, which has been a rivalry for a while, dating way back, that they kind of renewed once they came over to the SEC. I think here's the reality of this. They started with the big boys, and then everybody else just kind of got in where they fit in, right? Like, you knew, when you look at this, they knew they had to get Texas, Oklahoma, Texas A&M, and Texas, Arkansas in there. Like, you knew they had to get Auburn, Alabama. You knew they had to get Georgia and Auburn. You know that they had to get Tennessee and Vandy in there. You know they had to get probably Missouri and Arkansas in there, right? Like, there's just certain things that you knew had to be there, and then everything else was kind of like a grab bag for that third team that you were going to put on some of these schedules. But Texas needed those 3. I don't know that there's a better 3 to choose for Texas than those 3.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, maybe Missouri because they have some history in the past, right? But I'm totally fine with Texas's list there.
Yeah. Tennessee is going to have Alabama, Vanderbilt, and Florida.
Mm.
The first 2, love it. The third one, I mean, yeah. But, I mean, I think that's more of an SEC East rivalry than it was like this traditional rivalry. So,
yeah, that Spurrier, Philip Fulmer, kind of that era that they had together. It's been since I've been growing, you know, so I grew up, it was a fun one, and it's kind of continued to be. So I have no problem with it.
Yeah. South Carolina gets Florida, Georgia, and Missouri. South Carolina, one of those teams I feel like doesn't have a natural SEC rival. Like, what's the big? I mean, I'm not a South Carolina guy, right? So, but I don't know what big SEC game every year. I think that Georgia South Carolina game became contentious after a while, but are Florida and Missouri big?
The Florida thing was really, if I remember correctly, was kind of off of Steve Spurrier.
I about to say that feels like the Spurrier Bowl.
Yeah, and then it kind of sparked something there. And the Georgia thing, I feel like it happened organically. They played early in the season for a long time, and it was always like a great game. And that one just kind of, them being in the same division every year, that one kind of naturally built in the way that Auburn versus LSU in the West kind of naturally built, kind of the same thing over there. And there was a bunch of classic great games. And yeah, they're one of those teams where South Carolina, their traditional rival is in the ACC. So it's a numbers game when you're trying to mix and match there.
Yeah. Oklahoma gets Texas, Arkansas, and Missouri.
Love it.
That feels like it makes sense.
Yeah, for sure.
mean, that's like that old kind of the old traditional rivalries back when Missouri was in the same conference with Oklahoma before they come over to the SEC, and now Oklahoma's over in the SEC. Same thing with Arkansas. That's kind of an old rivalry there. Missouri gets Arkansas, Oklahoma, South Carolina. Again, we've kind of talked about some of this stuff. Mississippi State, of course, they're going to have Ole Miss, but then Texas A&M and Kentucky. You just threw some stuff together there. Everybody, Mississippi State was one of those throw them on with somebody else for their third person teams.
Yeah, Kentucky needs somebody. Mississippi State needs somebody. Hey, y'all both need somebody.
There you go. Ole Miss gets Mississippi State, of course, LSU and Kentucky. I like Ole Miss, LSU, of course. Mississippi State, Ole Miss got to be there. I think Kentucky, Ole Miss, is that? I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, the first two, definitely. I love the Ole Miss LSU game. That's one of my favorite games every year. And obviously the Egg Bowl is what it is. So, yeah, I'm trying to think for Ole Miss, like we're going to get to Auburn eventually. Maybe that's a team, that I would like to see. Maybe see that Auburn Ole Miss game more. It had kind of, just when that one has started to build up, the schedule changed up and they hopped off. But yeah, I mean, I've got no complaints with that one. As long as they're playing LSU every year at Mississippi State, I'm good with Ole Miss.
For sure. All right, next up, we've got LSU with Ole Miss, Texas A&M, and Alabama. You've got Kentucky with Vanderbilt, Ole Miss, and Mississippi State. So again, Kentucky was one of those teams like we just got to give them somebody, right? So
yeah.
we'll give them Vandy, Ole Miss, Mississippi State. That I don't see Kentucky and go, man, that Kentucky Ole Miss game, that Kentucky Mississippi State game, like
gotta see it.
Yeah, Georgia is going to get Florida, Auburn, and South Carolina. Those feel like pretty natural fits. Again, that South Carolina game kind of has been creeping up in there as far as one of those bigger rivalries. And of course, Florida and Auburn. Georgia, Florida, Georgia, Auburn, definitely big games on the schedule every single year, right? Like that game was played in Jacksonville for a while. I think they're trying to do home and home stuff now for that rivalry, but definitely one that makes sense. Florida, of course, gets Georgia, Tennessee, and South Carolina. Again, we already talked about the Spurrier Bowl there. And then Florida, Tennessee. Again, that feels more old school SEC East than it is like big. I mean, I think that game was really big when Florida was at their peak and Tennessee was, Philip Fulmer and, Peyton Manning and all that kind of thing. When Tennessee was kind of in their glory. But again, I don't mind that permanent situation there.
Auburn, I'm here in Florida, right? And I know a lot of Florida fans, and I've talked to a couple since these lists have come out. They are not happy with the possibility of losing that LSU rivalry. So again, I know LSU's got a lot of them, but those have been some crazy games, and I would hate to see that one go away.
Florida versus LSU does kind of feel like a game that you're supposed to see on the schedule every year, man. And so I'll go through these last couple here. Auburn gets Alabama, Georgia, Vanderbilt. Again, there's no natural rivalry there with Vandy. Auburn just needed a third, and it didn't need to be one of the powerhouses of the SEC every single year.
Right.
Which again, I don't know why it should matter all that much, because for years as an SEC West schedule, Auburn had to play that. So like a return to that wouldn't have been the worst thing in the world. Give them a reprieve, sure, but just figure out how the other 6 games in the conference are going to be some of the worst teams because you're going to play the best teams every other one. Arkansas, Missouri, Texas, and Oklahoma, and then Bama, Auburn, Tennessee, and LSU. Again, I feel like how they did this was our biggest brands are Georgia, Alabama, and Texas. We'll start there because Bama got all of their big games.
Right.
If they go to this, they got Auburn. They got now the one big game that is not on there that maybe has started to turn into something is Bama, Georgia, but Tennessee, of course, Auburn, of course. And I feel like traditionally it's been LSU. And so they have those 3. And then Texas getting the 3 that they absolutely needed to get, and Georgia getting at least 2 of the 3. I don't know if there's a third team that's better there for Georgia than South Carolina. But
yeah, I don't think
I think that they started with the big brands, and then everybody else just kind of got filled in some sort of way. What are your thoughts on which games? You already mentioned LSU versus Florida, but what do you feel like is the big every single year you were going to see this game, and that's going to now go away and maybe not even happen for 2 or 3 years in a row?
I'm going to be in the minority on this. But I love watching LSU Arkansas. And I feel like the LSU Bama game really took that turn with Saban. And then,
for sure.
But before that, there was animosity. But it I don't know, it wasn't a game it didn't have the gravity that it's had after that. And
sure.
part of that, the main part of it was Saban. And then also LSU's been consistent for the majority of that time. If anybody was going to step up and knock off Alabama, it was going to be LSU or maybe Auburn. So just based off of the competitiveness between those 2 teams, that also kind of eventually led to a lot of times they met up at 7-0, or one was 6-1 and the other one was 7-0 type thing. So it kind of bred a natural rivalry there. But man, that if Arkansas can be 2-8 playing an 8-2 LSU team, and I'm tuned in because Arkansas might pull that thing off. So
yeah, those games have been one of the wackier games. Year in and year out. So I agree.
Yeah. So that's one I'd hate to see go. And look, from Auburn's standpoint, if you look at the overall record, Vanderbilt could be a rival. I mean, if you don't
closely contested for sure.
If you don't know, you might be shocked when you look it up, just how close that series has been. Now, a lot of that dates back to before color TV, Vanderbilt just dominating Auburn back when Vanderbilt dominated a lot of people. But still, man, and again, that's kind of them throwing Auburn a lifeline. In terms of I'll say so this year, Auburn's going to play a football season for the 2nd year in a row where they don't play a team from Louisiana or Mississippi. Little crazy to me. So if you could replace that, I miss playing Mississippi State. I miss playing Ole Miss. So if you took that Vandy game out and put in Mississippi State, and maybe that's just old. Look, I was born in 1991, and the SEC expanded to divisions in 1992. So I grew up in the SEC West, SEC East scheduling, right? So maybe that's just that old nostalgia feeling of knowing we're going to play Mississippi State every year type thing as Auburn fans. Why I feel that way. But yeah, I think for the most part, when you look at it, I think that all these lists and the one that we've discussed it's all pretty logical. You keep the big ones, you keep the big brands, you keep the big money makers. Does a team like Tennessee get a little bit of help in the fact that their in-state rival Vanderbilt's go 7-6, and it's like, oh my gosh, look at Vanderbilt. They went 7-6. That's just kind of the program that they are. Sure, but it's an in-state rivalry that you can't get rid of. I don't think there's any games that that would be off that I would pound the table and say you can't lose this one, other than probably LSU, Florida. I think that's one you got to find a way to keep. But again, LSU is this one team that's got beef for half the conference. So
yeah, it's crazy how LSU has been good for so long, but everybody wants to play them. And some of these other teams, Georgia, Bama, have been good for so long, and nobody wants to play them. It's not like your fan base is gonna get more excited about that game because it's like you got an opportunity to knock off a big boy. But like you're not sitting there like, oh man, yes, we got them again this year. Like other than I think the vitriol between Auburn and Tennessee towards Bama makes that different where you look forward to that game every single year.
Yeah.
Same thing with like Georgia when you think about Auburn and you think about Florida, like they look forward to that game every year. Outside of that, I don't know that anybody's like licking their chops to play Georgia or Bama every single year. Like I just don't know. And I could be wrong. Maybe some other fan bases feel that way, and I'm just not a part of that culture of things. The only one that I would say hasn't happened recently, but just kind of a traditional, I was hoping the Amen Corner would come back around. You know, that was a show that we did on this channel a long time ago where it was Bama, Georgia, Florida. And that's just kind of like that was an old school traditional three group of people that you knew Auburn was going to play every year. And it's going to be tough, but you were going to get tested every single season. There's been some wild moments in the Auburn versus Florida thing.
Yes.
That was one I was hoping would make a resurrection if you're going to have three permanent opponents. But I'm not mad at Vanderbilt being that third for Auburn either. So, but yeah, overall, I think this is pretty good. There were just some, again, like Kentucky, you just kind of have to find somebody for them. Yep. So, Vanderbilt, same thing. So we'll see how it goes. But I am looking forward to seeing what happens in this next season with those other 6 games, because those are going to be super interesting once we get to scheduling for those. All right, man, you got any final thoughts before we get out of here?
Yes. Auburn, Georgia Tech, renew this thing. If Auburn has to schedule, if every SEC team has to schedule a Power 4 conference team, make it Georgia Tech. I know that they're good this year. I expect them to be good this year, but overall, it's not like you're going to be throwing a powerhouse opponent on your schedule if you're Auburn. It's a team that you should match up with roster-wise year in and year out, and it's a fun game. Hell, they used to have a parade for it, so bring that thing back, man. And then so actually, other matchups, like if you're LSU, play Tulane. I know they're an American conference, but they got a trophy on the line for that one. I'm talking a lot about LSU on this one, but there's some opportunities here to kind of get some old school rivalries like you mentioned back up, and that would be fun to see.
You bring up an interesting thing with that though, right? Because if you're going to be required to schedule at least one other Power 4 opponent, right? Some of these teams already have that on their thing, right? So you're not going to get a rotation of those P4 additional opponents now, right? Like South Carolina will never play anybody else except for Clemson outside the conference and a bunch of they're not going to. I find it difficult to believe South Carolina is going to take the challenge of another P4 opponent outside of Clemson and only have one bye game on their schedule every season. I find it difficult to believe that Georgia, like you're not going to see Georgia in some kickoff game now unless that game is Georgia Tech or it's going to be one of the SEC games that they're kicking off, right? Like you're going to see a lot of those dissipate with those teams that already have. You already mentioned Louisville and Kentucky, right? Like you're not going to get kickoff games with SEC teams anymore. What you got this season with Texas and now Ohio State may happen because Texas doesn't, but like maybe they renew Bedlam, right? With Oklahoma State, right? Maybe they pull an in-state thing for Texas and they go and get Texas Tech or, I don't know, whatever team that they want to within. They got Texas A&M back, so maybe they're not as pressed to do that. But you're not going to see as many of those games anymore because there's going to be, again, less teams available to go play those marquee out-of-conference matchups for the SEC. But again, this is what you guys wanted. So clearly, maybe what they really wanted, maybe locate is what they were saying. I'm tired of playing the SEC during the regular season. So you guys play your own conference, guys, and do that. And don't come over here screwing with us during the regular season. Maybe that's what this was about.
I have a question for you and fans. I would love to hear from all the different fan bases watching the show in the comments. Does this devalue the SEC championship?
I think moving to the additional playoff games is going to hurt a lot of conference championships. I think the conference championship model is going to be, unless somehow they make the conference championship part of a playoff scenario, I think it's going to be very difficult because like choosing the regular season champs just based upon like who they play, it's about to be a mess. What the postseason is going to look like, and bowl games are going to look ridiculous now too. So
They
yeah,
already do. Yeah.
we're talking about a fundamental shift in what it looks like for college football with the SEC moving to this. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if for me personally, if you can find that sweet spot like Tennessee did last year, 10-2. I know, look, I know you don't want to go on the road to Ohio State and they ultimately got smacked and everything like that. But look, I could see a route to where the best thing to do is be the third or fourth best team in the conference and
Yeah.
avoid that championship game. That first round bye didn't do anything for Georgia last year.
Yeah. I can definitely see that being a new thing that people are saying, man, I'd rather not play in it anyway, just to rest up. So same thing that they were saying with basketball, get the additional rest, be out early in the SEC tournament. It doesn't mean anything
Oh, I'm on
anyway.
board with that one. I want Auburn to lose week one, first game of the SEC basketball tournament. At least, because we saw it. You've
Yeah.
seen teams win the SEC tournament in basketball, and it mean nothing for their seeding, what their seeding was before the tournament to after. It didn't change their seeding at all. So if
Yeah.
it's a similar scenario, yeah, man, get me. And injuries are probably going to go up because you're playing another SEC game. Do you want to play 10 SEC games before you hop in the playoffs? I think not.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's not as if that you're going to play a cream puff for that 10th. You're going to play the
Yeah.
best other team in the league, right? So I don't know. Going to be very interesting. I'm surprised that this happened, but I'm not mad at it because I love SEC football. So, more SEC football, good for me. But not necessarily what I think I want to see for the sport.
Yeah.
But we'll see how it goes going forward. Anyway, great conversation here. Definitely want to hear from you all. What are your thoughts on the SEC moving to this 9-game schedule? Leave those right down there. Before you get out of here, make sure you like the video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We'll be back with more great content over here on the Just a Sec Pod. We are out of here. Peace.